I stood there, a degree in my hand, my name just called over the speakers. The applause filled the room, but it felt like a sound that belonged to someone else. I tried to smile, to force the pride and joy I thought I'd feel, but all I could hear was the empty echo of my own footsteps as I walked across the stage. There was no one in the crowd, no wife, no kids, no familiar face. The seats in the front row were empty, and not just empty, but vacant in a way that made my chest tighten with a weight I wasn't expecting. I'd worked for this day, given everything I had, and it wasn't supposed to feel like this. For 4 years, I'd spent more time in libraries than in my own home. I had missed birthdays, anniversaries, weekends just to make sure I could finish this degree. I was doing it for them. For Karen. For Lily and Marcus. I thought we were a team. I thought they understood. They had promised to be there. Karen had even said, "We'll scream so loud you'll cry, I swear." But now, standing on that stage, I couldn't help but feel the crushing reality of what I already knew. They weren't coming. I searched the faces in the crowd, hoping for a glimpse of someone, anyone, who might have shown up. But there was nothing. I thought maybe they were running late, caught in traffic. Maybe there was an emergency. But as the ceremony went on, the harsh truth settled in. They weren't late. They weren't coming at all. I shook the dean's hand, took my diploma, and smiled for the photograph. But the smile didn't reach my eyes. The hollow applause from the audience felt like it was mocking me, reminding me of something I couldn't ignore anymore. I wasn't just alone in that room. I had been abandoned. I walked off the stage, heading toward the exit, my legs carrying me without thinking. My phone buzzed in my pocket, pulling me from my thoughts. For a moment, I hoped it was Karen. Maybe she was finally apologizing. Maybe there was some explanation. Something to make this day mean what I had hoped it would. I took the phone out of my pocket, my hands trembling. The message was from Karen. "We need to talk urgently." My heart stopped for a moment. I stared at the words, trying to process them. "No, I'm sorry I missed it. No, I'm proud of you. No, I love you." Just that. I stood still in the hallway, holding the phone in my hands, letting the buzz of life around me drown out for a moment. I didn't reply right away. I couldn't. Instead, I slipped the phone back into my pocket and walked outside. The weight of my degree in my hand felt heavier than it should. I had earned it, yes. But what did it mean if the people I did it for didn't even care enough to show up? I leaned against the wall, staring at the phone, unsure what to do next. What was I supposed to think? What was I supposed to feel? Was I angry? Hurt? I didn't know. All I knew was that the hole in my chest wasn't going away anytime soon. If you're still here, you're clearly hooked. Tap that like button, and don't forget to subscribe. Comment your country. We love seeing this family grow. I glanced down at the phone again. There was another message, this time from Karen, time-stamped 20 minutes later. I opened it. I didn't want you to hear it from someone else, but I'm at your brother Ethan's place. We've been seeing each other. I didn't want to ruin your day, but I couldn't lie anymore. The world around me blurred. The hallway seemed to tilt for a second as my breath caught in my throat. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I could almost hear the applause again, but now, it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like a mockery. The words on the screen, they burned. Ethan, my brother. I leaned against the wall, unable to move, unable to think. The weight of their absence, the weight of their betrayal, crashed over me like a flood I wasn't prepared for. But I wasn't going to break. I couldn't. Not yet. I closed my eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath, trying to center myself. I thought about what Karen had said, how she didn't want to ruin my day. It had been ruined the moment I walked onto that stage and realized they weren't there. I didn't reply to the message. Not right away. Instead, I just stood there in the quiet hallway, the sound of the world outside still swirling around me. This wasn't just about missing my graduation. This was about something deeper, something I couldn't put into words yet. And maybe that was the point. Maybe I didn't need to say anything at all. They had made their choices. So had I. I sat in my car, the engine humming softly, but all I could hear was the silence around me. The world outside felt distant, muted. I had worked so hard for this day. 3 jobs, endless nights, skipping family dinners, weekends spent buried in textbooks, all so I could stand on that stage and show my family what I could accomplish. My degree, our degree, was supposed to be proof of everything I had sacrificed. But now, it felt like it had no weight, no meaning. I let my fingers graze the steering wheel, each minute dragging on longer than the last. I tried to replay the ceremony in my mind, hoping to find some comfort in the memories of my achievement. But all I could picture was the empty seat in the front row, the one that was supposed to be filled by Karen, by my kids. The message from Karen had been simple, almost too simple for something that felt like it carried the weight of 1,000 unanswered questions. We need to talk urgently. No explanation, no context, just those words, sitting heavy on my phone screen. I had hoped for more. I had expected more. She had promised she'd be there. But the empty seats, the silence that followed my name, told me everything I needed to know. What could possibly be more urgent than my graduation? What I worked so hard for, if not for this? I sat still, staring at the phone. The message was like a stone, sinking deeper and deeper into my chest. And as I sat there, the clock on the dashboard ticking quietly, I realized something I hadn't been ready to admit. This wasn't just about missing my graduation day. It was about something far bigger, something that had been slowly unraveling beneath the surface for months. I unlocked the phone slowly, hesitating. The message glowed in front of me. I read it again. We need to talk urgently. I tried to find some clarity in those words, some answer to what they meant, but the uncertainty gnawed at me. This wasn't just about the ceremony. It was about something that had been quietly building, hidden beneath promises and routine. What did she want? Why now? After everything I'd done. I'd given my all, and yet there I was, alone in my car, the weight of the day pressing down on me like an anchor. There was no panic, no rush, just an unsettling calm that settled deep in my chest. Something was off, and for the first time, I wasn't sure I wanted to know what. I didn't respond right away. I just sat there, staring at the message. It felt like the calm before a storm, the stillness before everything I had worked for began to shatter. I had spent years convincing myself that everything I did, every sacrifice I made, was for them. But today, that didn't feel true. It felt like I had been doing it all for a version of my family that no longer existed. It wasn't about the degree anymore. It was about what I had been willing to lose in the process. As the minutes ticked by, I could feel myself starting to let go. I wasn't sure when it had happened, but somewhere along the way, I had started to detach from the people I loved, from the life I thought I had. And the hardest part was realizing that maybe this was for the best. I took a deep breath and stared out the window, letting the cool air wash over me. For a moment, everything was still. There was no rush, no pressing need to make a decision. I wasn't ready to call her. Not yet. But I knew I wasn't the same person I had been when I walked into that auditorium. The waiting game was only just beginning. The house felt different. Empty. Silent. The kind of silence that seeps into your bones. A quiet that makes your thoughts louder than the world around you. The walls, once filled with laughter and the sound of our children's voices, now seemed to press in on me, reminding me of what I had lost. I could hear nothing but the hum of my own breathing, the soft buzz of the refrigerator in the kitchen. She wasn't there. Karen wasn't there, and I knew she wouldn't be coming back. I sat down at my desk, the weight of the degree still in my hands. It should have been a victory, my proof that I had made it. But now it felt like nothing more than a symbol of the life that had been stolen from me. I stared at the family photos scattered across my desk. Smiling faces, happy memories, my wife, my kids, all the moments I thought we'd share as a family. All those promises she made. We'll get through this together, she had said. I'll be here, cheering you on. But those words were just empty echoes now. They didn't matter. Not when everything had crumbled in the silence of the house. I looked at the photos again, but it was hard to see them the same way. All I could feel was the growing emptiness where our family once stood. I felt a pull in my chest, a deep ache, but I didn't want to feel it anymore. I wanted to find answers. I turned to my phone, hoping for some distraction. I opened social media, not expecting anything, but I couldn't stop myself. I had to know. Ethan's profile popped up first. A family barbecue. There they were, Karen, my kids, all of them, laughing and smiling. Ethan holding Lily on his shoulders, Marcus in his arms. The image of my family, the family I had worked so hard to build, smiling in a place where I wasn't even invited, where I wasn't even wanted. My hands trembled, the phone slipping in my grip as I scrolled through the pictures. The images blurred for a moment, but I forced myself to keep going. I wasn't looking for answers in the faces of my family. Not anymore. But there it was. A photo when I almost missed. It wasn't there for long. Just a glitch, a split second, but I saw it. Karen, kissing Ethan. The image disappeared before I could even breathe, but it was too late. The truth had already found me. The photo, though quickly deleted, was already burned into my memory. I wasn't imagining it. I wasn't mistaken. That was her, my wife, kissing my brother. The world around me seemed to shift. The floor felt distant, like I was floating above it, disconnected. My heart raced in my chest, the rush of blood drowning out the quiet hum of the house. I wanted to scream, to throw my phone against the wall, but I didn't. I couldn't. Not yet. I just stared at the screen, the image frozen in my mind. The betrayal, so raw and so sudden, hit me with a weight that was hard to describe. It was a pain that was both sharp and cold, a shock that cut through everything I thought I knew. Karen and Ethan, together. I leaned back in a chair, my hands clenched tightly around the phone, my knuckles white. My thoughts raced, but I couldn't organize them. I couldn't make sense of what had happened, of what I had seen. How long had it been going on? Had they been hiding this from me for months? Years? I should have felt anger, right? I should have felt rage. But there was nothing. There was just a quiet resignation settling in, like a truth I had known deep down but had refused to accept. I put the phone down slowly, my fingers still shaking. I looked at the photos again. The family photos that once filled me with warmth now only reminded me of what I had lost. The life I had built for us, the love I had invested, all of it was a lie. The silence in the house became louder. I felt it in my bones, a cold silence that echoed everything I couldn't say. The betrayal wasn't just from Karen. It was from Ethan, too. My brother. My flesh and blood. The one person I thought I could trust. I closed my eyes, breathing deeply, trying to center myself. But I couldn't. I couldn't find my footing. And I knew, for the first time, that I would never look at them the same way again. I wasn't sure what I was supposed to do next. But I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going to fight for something that wasn't mine to keep anymore. The truth had come to light, and now I had to decide what to do with it. But first, I needed to sit with the silence, sit with the broken pieces of life I thought I had. I didn't respond right away. The phone buzzed a few more times, Karen's name flashing on the screen, but I ignored it. There was nothing to say. No words could fix what had already been broken. So I stayed still, silent. I knew I had a choice. I could let anger control me, let it take over and make decisions I would regret. Or I could do what I had learned to do over the years. Keep calm, keep moving, and take back control. And that's exactly what I did. In the quiet of that night, when the house was still and empty, I opened my laptop. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment. I wasn't sure why I felt the need to do it then, but I did. My life had just shattered. I had lost everything I thought I could count on. But I wasn't going to let this be the end. I began to work. I didn't make a scene. I didn't scream, didn't go into a rage. I didn't even cry. There was no time for that. What I had learned over the years was that the loudest things in life are often the ones that come with the most noise, the most mess, the most distractions. I didn't need that. I opened up my accounts. I'd spent years quietly building something they would never know about, a safety net, small and invisible, but strong. While they lived their lives, I had been calculating, preparing for any eventuality. Every paycheck, every business deal, every hour of overtime, it all added up to something more than just survival. It added up to security. It added up to a plan. With a few clicks, I checked my savings, my investments, my properties. I secured everything, double-checked passwords, moved a few things into other accounts, just in case. I knew exactly where I stood. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Enough to rebuild. Enough to start over. I wasn't the type to just sit back and wait for the world to hand me something. I'd never been that person. If they thought I had nothing left, if they thought I was just going to lie down and take this, they were wrong. They didn't know me. Not really. They didn't know the quiet strength it took to hold things together for so long. I wasn't going to let them take it all. I wasn't going to let the trust one had in them be the thing that destroyed me. The plan was already in motion. I didn't need to explain it to anyone. I didn't need validation or sympathy. I knew exactly what I was doing. My next move was going to be quiet, calculated, and methodical. I wasn't going to make the same mistake twice. I thought about Karen, about Ethan, how they thought they could simply walk away from me, from everything we built together. But they didn't know how deep my roots went, how much I had invested in my own future, outside of them. This wasn't just about revenge. It wasn't about getting back at them for what they did. It was about something deeper. It was about proving to myself that I could stand on my own no matter what. The silence in the house was my ally. I didn't need noise. I didn't need distractions. I needed to focus. I checked the final document, confirming everything I needed. I didn't feel the satisfaction I thought I would. It wasn't about winning or losing. It was about moving forward. And as the night stretched on, I realized something. I wasn't afraid anymore. I had been broken, yes, but that didn't mean I couldn't rebuild. That didn't mean I couldn't be stronger than before. The future was mine to shape, and I wasn't going to let anyone stand in my way. The days after that night were quieter than I expected. At first, I thought I would feel the urge to confront Karen, to yell, to make her understand how much she had hurt me. But I didn't. Instead, I kept my silence. I didn't return her calls. I didn't send her any messages. I didn't need to say anything. What I realized was that I didn't need to react. What I needed was to watch. Watch everything fall apart. Ethan's career didn't collapse overnight, but the cracks were starting to show. Slowly at first, a missed promotion here, a failed deal there. Subtle things, but enough for me to see that the foundation of everything he had built was shaking. I wasn't in a rush to confront either of them. I had spent too many years trying to make things work, try to patch up a life that had already been broken. Now, I was content to let them unravel it themselves. The email I had sent with the documentation of their affair, each detail carefully laid out, time and factual, began to take its toll. It wasn't something that could be swept under the rug. Not this time. The truth, quiet and certain, was going to have its way. I wasn't looking for revenge. I didn't want to destroy them. That wasn't the point. What mattered now was making sure they knew who had the last word. They could hide from the consequences, pretend they had nothing to lose, but deep down they knew. I had been patient, methodical, and most importantly, silent. By the time I reached out to Karen, I was no longer the man who wanted answers. I was no longer the man who had begged for her to stay, for her to see the life we built together. I had already moved beyond that. I didn't need her to apologize, to explain. I just needed to make sure she understood the reality of what was happening. When I called her, my voice was calm. There was no anger, no shouting, just the quiet finality of a man who had already won. "The house isn't yours anymore," I said. "I've locked the accounts. And the kids, Karen, they'll stay with me." Her voice faltered. "What are you talking about? You can't just do this." "I already have." The words felt final, and I felt something settle deep in my chest. Not satisfaction, not victory, but something more important. Peace. The phone call was brief. I didn't need to explain further. Karen was already trying to catch up with the mess she had made. I could hear the panic in her voice, but it didn't affect me. I had nothing left to prove. The truth had already done its work. In the days that followed, I kept my distance. I didn't rush to finalize the divorce papers or take any public steps. I was content to wait, to let her feel the weight of her choices. I thought about the kids. I thought about how they would handle all of this when the truth finally came out. But I wasn't afraid for them. I wasn't afraid for me either. What I had built for them was already set in motion. What I had created outside of this mess, quietly, carefully, would protect us all. Karen and Ethan's world had already begun to crumble. I had no need to be part of the destruction. I just needed to stand firm, wait, and let the quiet unraveling take its course. The rest would come in time. The next time Karen called, I didn't answer. I didn't need to. What I had already done, what I had already decided, was final, and in that finality, I found the calm I had been searching for all along. 6 months had passed since the day everything had fallen apart. 6 months of quiet rebuilding, of letting go of things I thought I could never lose. In those months, I hadn't rushed to make any grand gestures. I didn't need to. I just let the pieces fall where they would, trusting that the quiet strength I had been building would be enough. Standing in front of the dean again felt surreal. But this time, the situation was different. The weight of the degree I held wasn't just about the 4 years I'd spent pushing myself to the limit. It wasn't just about the sleepless nights, the missed moments with my family, the long hours spent juggling jobs and classes. This moment represented something deeper, something I hadn't been able to fully grasp back then. The plaque in my hand was more than recognition for a degree. It was a symbol of resilience, a quiet victory. It wasn't just about the achievement anymore. It was about the journey, a journey that had unfolded in silence, away from prying eyes, away from those who thought they knew my story. I thought about the photos from my graduation day, the ones that once felt like a reminder of everything I had lost. I had spent so many nights replaying the emptiness in my mind, the absence of Karen, of my kids, of the family I thought I could count on. But now, those photos represented something else. They were no longer about the pain of abandonment. They were about the strength I had found in those empty moments, about how I had stood in front of an entire auditorium, alone but not broken, how I had carried myself through the hardest chapter of my life, not with loud anger or defiance, but with quiet dignity. I had done it for me. I thought of Karen then, of the video message she had sent, desperate and broken, the woman who had thought I would crumble under the weight of her betrayal, the woman who had assumed that my silence meant weakness. But she didn't know me. She didn't know what I was capable of when I had nothing left to lose. "You're just going to let this happen, aren't you?" she had said in the message, her voice cracking. "You're going to let me destroy everything we built." I remember the cold calm I felt as I watched it, the absence of panic, the absence of emotion. I hadn't needed to reply. The truth had already done its work. I knew then that the only thing that mattered was how I moved forward, how I chose to rebuild my life from the ground up. And now, standing here in front of the dean, I realized something. The real victory wasn't the diploma, wasn't the recognition or the approval of others. The victory was in the peace I had found in silence. It was in the quiet strength that had carried me through. I had rebuilt my life, not out of anger, but out of a quiet determination to be better, to be stronger, to be free. I thought about my kids, about how they would remember this time. They were young, but I knew that one day they would understand. They would see that their father didn't crumble. He didn't lash out. He didn't destroy everything around him in a fit of rage. He stood tall. He rebuilt, and he found peace in the process. The journey wasn't over, but I had found something I had never expected. Peace. And I knew that peace would outlast any storm, any betrayal, any hardship. As I shook the dean's hand, the applause around me felt different. It wasn't the same hollow noise I had heard months ago. This time it felt real. This time it felt like it belonged to me. I wasn't the man I used to be, and that was the greatest victory of all. Thank you for watching till the end. If the message stayed with you, give a like, subscribe for more, and let us know how it made you feel.